How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to Monitor Comics, the channel where we create comics and manga. If this is your first time stopping by the channel, then I hope you'll consider subscribing after you finish watching this video. In today's video, we're going to be going over 5 tips to instantly make your comic/manga characters more relatable. Make sure you watch until the end of the video because by the end, you'll know everything you need to know about creating relatable characters. Let's jump right into it. I'm sure you've seen this term relatable thrown around in your everyday life. We use the word relatable when we observe something that reminds us of our own personal experience. Maybe you see someone trip while walking up the stairs. One might say, that's relatable, I've done that before. Here's another example. Suppose you confess your heart out to the love of your life only to get friend-zoned, so you fall into a pathetic pit of despair that can only be soothed by binge-watching anime and eating a tub of ice cream in your bedroom. In all seriousness, the characters in your comics and manga should be able to strike a chord with your reader. Readers want to pick up books to immerse themselves in the world within. Readers want to feel and connect with the characters they're reading about. That's why it's so vital that the characters in your comics and manga are three-dimensional and unforgettable. For a character to be three-dimensional, they have to feel real. Three-dimensional characters are written as credible people that the reader could know in real life. Like actual humans, three-dimensional characters have flaws and shortcomings. By creating characters your reader can empathize with, you'll be able to allow them to connect to them on a personal level. This is achieved through creating characters with humility and a justifiable existence. The first tip to creating a relatable character is layer your character's personality. Just like cakes and ogres, characters have layers. The surface layer refers to how the outside world perceives your character. The surface layer encompasses your character's appearance, name, and general role in your story. Nailing your character's surface level layers is the first step to making sure your character doesn't blend into the background. Think of popular anime characters like Yu-Gi-Moto, Natsu Dragon Neil, Son Goku, and Monkey D. Luffy. Each of these characters is recognizable at first glance because their whole surface level design is so unique. The second layer of your character has to do with their personality traits. What adjectives would you use to describe your character? Do they have any personality tics or quirks that make them stand out when they're around other characters? Do they have a particular way of speaking or accent? Think of iconic anime characters like Mob from Mob Psycho 100 and Koro Sensei from Assassination Classroom. These characters are so unforgettable because their personality traits are so profound. If you're listing out personality traits for your character, choose 1 or 2 to really emphasize on so your character really stands out. Mob from Mob Psycho 100 is very socially awkward. Although he wants to make friends and have a girlfriend, his inability to express emotions stunts him from being able to connect with others. This plot point sets this character up for a development arc that will leave the readers feeling incredibly sympathetic. As a viewer, we all know what it feels like to not be able to express our feelings. This character just emphasizes that insecurity, creating a character we can all see ourselves within. Koro Sensei from Assassination Classroom is a really interesting character because even though he's overpowered, he's very down to earth and likable. Despite Koro Sensei's dark and traumatic past, all he wants is the best for his students. As a viewer, we can all relate back to our younger days. I'm sure we've all had at least one older person who we looked up to and aspired to be like. Assassination Classroom takes this seminal concept and amplifies it to create a series that makes us cry whenever we watch it. In my opinion, the easiest way to make your character relatable is to show their vulnerability. Think about it, everyone's vulnerable. We all have flaws and insecurities that make us ourselves. By placing your character in situations they aren't able to handle, their humility will shine through in moments of vulnerability. Think of sympathetic characters like Deku from My Hero Academia and Megumi from Food Wars. Both of these characters are flawed and insecure. Despite this, we can't help but cheer for them after watching the pain they experience and their resolve to grow. In My Hero Academia, Deku wants nothing more than to be a hero. Unfortunately, he was a part of the small population of humans that was born powerless. Deku's constantly bullied for continuing to believe that he can become a hero even without powers. By the end of the first episode, we see Deku risk his life to save someone in danger while the actual heroes stood by and did nothing. Many of us know what it feels like to be powerless in a situation, so Deku's experience is an amazing example of how vulnerability can lead to instant relatability in a character. Similarly, in Food Wars, Megumi believes her country style of cooking isn't worthy enough of recognition. She believes she'll always exist in her friend's shadows and always be a mediocre chef. Despite this, as the story progresses, we see Megumi persevere and perfect her own style of cooking. After countless failures, we continue to see her grow, eventually allowing her to place within the school's top 10 chefs. We all know what it feels like to not be the best at something, so watching a character work their way from the bottom to the top is inspiring. Inspiration can play a huge role in making your characters more relatable to your reader. The third layer of your character is all about spontaneous actions. Let's face it, personality traits are fluid. As humans, we're all constantly growing, learning, changing our behaviors. Your manga character should reflect this. Don't be afraid to have your characters act quote-unquote out of character. If a situation calls for it, your character may act out, withhold their emotions, or maybe even do something nobody expected them to ever do. Spontaneous action is a part of being human and should always be considered when you're writing out the events of your comics. Think of a character like Ken Kaneki from Tokyo Ghoul. In Tokyo Ghoul, Kaneki starts out as a very timid and sensitive boy. His personality begins to take a shift for the worst after accidentally acquiring the supernatural power of the ghouls. For a while, Kaneki is determined to never eat human meat and to never use his powers to harm others. This moral code is shattered after Kaneki's torture for 10 days straight. He loses his sense of reason and empathy and decides that the only way he can survive his trauma is to become heartless. This quote-unquote out-of-character personality shift emphasizes how easy it is for people to lose their way ethically. As humans, we all make bad decisions. Moving on to tip number 2, challenging your characters. As the creator, it's hard to view our stories from a reader's perspective. Since we came up with the idea, we'll always know more about the manga than anyone else. We'll also have a deeper understanding and appreciation of our own work. So take a step back every once in a while and think about if you would actually read the work you're creating. Have someone you know read over your work and provide feedback to make sure your story actually makes sense. By having a second pair of eyes on your work, it'll be a million times easier to notice weak areas that need more attention, or areas that need clarification, or areas that should be simplified for your reader's understanding. A common problem writers encounter is not understanding the importance of relatability. Think a power fantasy isekai anime like Sword Art Online, Overlord, No Game No Life, and Do You Love Your Mother and her 2-hit multi-target attacks. What all these series have in common is they contain freakishly overpowered protagonists who we know are going to easily overcome any obstacle, quote-unquote obstacle, that stands in their way. The literary term power fantasy refers to a sense of escapism created by a meaningless display of dominance. In simpler terms, isekai anime often contain overpowered characters so viewers can just turn their brains off and enjoy fights mindlessly. The repetitiveness created by this predictability is an easy way for a viewer to label your work mediocre or generic. Characters are determined by their choices. Ask yourself, what does your character want? How far will your character go to get it? What are they willing to sacrifice? The harder the choices, the more vulnerable your character will become. By not babying your characters, you'll allow them to face shortcomings head on. Doing so will allow your characters to act spontaneously and grow in the process. By setting your character up with believable human struggles, they'll become more relatable. Think of characters like Tomoko from Watamote, Tomoya from Clannad, and Edward Elric from Fullmetal Alchemist. What all three of these characters have in common is they were dealt a bad hand from the start. This forces their insecurities to be faced head on, creating the opportunity for them to develop as characters. In Watamote, the only thing in the world Tomoko wants is to make some friends. Due to her severe social anxiety, lack of confidence, and inexperience communicating with others, she constantly struggles to express her emotions to those around her. Despite this, she perseveres and continues to push herself to try and connect with someone. Many of us can relate to the struggles this character goes through because loneliness and acceptance are both emotions we all experience. Likewise, Tomoya from Clannad begins the series as a slacker in school. Already relatable, to be honest. By the second season, he unexpectedly becomes a young father and has to figure out what it means to be a good parent. Many of us, especially young adult parents, can relate to this character who used to live his life just doing whatever he wanted and floating by, but now he has to suddenly become a respectable man with responsibilities. In Fullmetal Alchemist, Edward Elric lost his parents at a young age and lost his younger brother a little bit later during a failed alchemy ritual. Even though Edward doesn't wear his heart on his sleeve, he's determined to do whatever it takes to bring his brother back to life, since he couldn't save his parents. We can all relate to losing someone close to us. We can also relate to holding our emotions in when they're too much to handle. Moving on to tip number 3, using humor to create empathy. Let's face it, we all like to laugh. Laughing is how we express our natural enjoyment of something entertaining. Laughing can also be a powerful coping mechanism. Regardless, humor is an incredibly powerful literary tool that can really boost the relatability of the characters in your manga. Humor can be expressed in a variety of ways. Some common tactics include self-deprecating humor, snarky comments, and slapstick comedy. Humorous characters are easier to connect with because people feel more comfortable around those who make us lower our guards. Think of lovable characters like Sokka from Avatar: The Last Airbender and Saiki from The Disastrous Life of Saiki K. What these two characters have in common is they are very easily likable because of how much comedic value they add to their respective series. In Avatar: The Last Airbender, the series shifts between lighthearted adventure stories and serious war themes. Despite lacking any supernatural bending abilities, Sokka grounds every character's conflicting personalities with his comic relief. His witty one-liners, sarcasm, and slapstick jokes allow for very amusing scenarios and character interactions. In The Disastrous Life of Saiki K, Saiki is a powerful Esper who just wants to be left alone to live a normal life. Despite being portrayed as the most serious character in the series, Saiki is easily the most hilarious, due to how he reacts to the chaos that occurs around him. As a result, Saiki often finds himself in the middle of ridiculous misadventures and interacting with very quirky characters. Humor is a great tool that is often underlooked by amateur comic and manga artists. Your story doesn't have to be a gag manga to have comedic moments. If you want more information about writing comedy manga, please check out my video covering that topic. I'll link it right in the top right hand corner right now. Jumping to tip number 4, establishing your manga's theme. Themes are topics that your story explores. Some common themes include grief, identity, adventure, power, love, and loss. More than likely, your character's journey likely centers around one or more of these themes. Themes represent the foundation of a near universal human experience. In simpler terms, themes are human. To be human is to be relatable. By consciously building your character's stories around themes your target demographic have likely experienced, you increase the chance that some of these readers will end up empathizing with some of your characters. A well-known example of a relatable character that utilizes their story's themes is Hinata Shoyo from the sports shonen anime series Haikyuu. Hinata is a high school student who is obsessed with the idea of playing on a volleyball team. Despite his passion, he's dealt a bad hand. For one, he's tiny. In volleyball, taller players reign supreme. Second, Hinata's middle school does not have a boys team, so he's forced to train on his own and eventually with the girls team until he moves on to high school. Some themes in Haikyuu include teamwork, friendship, and exceeding limits. Hinata's literal character embodies these themes and can be seen throughout the series. To compensate for his height, Hinata constantly puts in the maximum effort to improve himself. He's an all-around optimistic guy who supports both his teammates and his rival teams. This idea of infusing your manga's characters with your story's themes can also be applied to darker characters like anti-heroes and antagonists. Darker characters are often driven to negative action by themes like grief, hurt, fear, or jealousy. By exploring this theme, which is the root source of your character's harmful behavior, you can encourage readers to empathize with your character's choices, no matter how dark the action or consequence. A well-known example of an anti-hero who embodies their story's theme is Light Yagami from Death Note. In Death Note, Light Yagami is the protagonist who comes into possession of a demonic notebook that can kill whoever's name is written inside. A major theme in Death Note is justice/righteousness. The reader's forced to follow Light's perspective as he attempts to cleanse the world from criminals to create a safer society. While his actions are inherently wrong, the readers are forced to see things from his murderous point of view, ultimately making us bystanders to the negative actions taking place. Finally, moving on to tip number 5. Cheap tricks to instantly make your character more relatable. If you don't feel like doing the work of fully fleshing out your characters in your comic, there are a few cheap ways to force your reader to empathize with them. This technique is known as the pet the dog scene. Basically, as long as your character appears kind and acts generous, most readers won't think twice about not liking them. If you give them an animal sidekick, even better. Who doesn't love cute animals? Animal mascots can be seen in many popular manga including Fairy Tail, Bleach, Blue Exorcist, Kuroko's Basketball, and any magical girl anime. If your character is an antagonist or an anti-hero, this scene can take a different form. Usually, you'll want to showcase the tender side of this type of character. A few warnings about using either of these techniques though. For one, they're overdone and can be seen as cliche. 2, make sure the caring act is unassuming. A true caregiver doesn't stop to think about how kind they're being. A good example of this type of character is Bishamon from Noragami. During her initial introductions, Bishamon was described as a warrior god whose mission was to hunt down the main protagonist. As a result of this, we can only see her menacing side. As the series develops, we begin to get a glimpse into Bishamon's point of view, and we see several instances of her motherly personality. These scenes of vulnerability allow us to sympathize with this antagonistic character and lower our guards a bit whenever she shows up in the story. Another good example is the scene in Avatar: The Last Airbender where Zuko rescues Appa from the Earth Kingdom prison. Other than that, that's going to do it for this video. I really hope you got some value out of it. If you did, please like the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. It really helps me and the channel grow. Just a quick announcement, we did hit 5,000 subscribers on this channel, and I just want to thank each and every one of you for continuing to support the channel and watch these videos. Please leave a comment down below telling us about the characters in your comic or manga projects. If you're looking for something to watch after you're done watching this video, please check out some of my other videos. We've already covered a ton of cool topics, including scripting your manga, writing character development, storyboarding your manga, and even improving your manga character's dialogue. I'll link all those videos down in the description below. You can also use the links down below to follow me on all my social media accounts. I post all my finished artwork over on my Instagram. My commissions are currently open, so feel free to reach out on Instagram if you would like to purchase original artwork from me. As always, keep creating, guys. I'll see you all in the next one.